Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Now we are chatting a bit about what has been happening on the political scene. Now we saw that the conversation was very prevalent in the media yesterday in regards to that press conference that Dr. Keith Rowley did, where he made his official announcement that his successor would be Minister Stuart Young. Now, this morning we have the comments and perspectives of Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath, who is a political analyst, and we are chatting this morning on the Prime Minister's handover. Good morning, Dr. Ragoonath, and welcome.
Yeah, good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Right. Now that announcement was made yesterday, and we have heard a number of perspectives coming from all sectors of the society. But one of the key conversations happening has to do with how constitutionally sound was the decision for the caucus, the parliamentary caucus, to make such a decision, as opposed to waiting on the PNM's convention to make a decision that the entire party subscribes to or supports.
But yeah, okay, so it's two different things entirely that you're talking about here. In the notion with regard to the issue of the constitutionality of the uh, election of a prime minister, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Uh, what the Constitution says quite clearly that the president will elect a prime minister who commands a majority of the members of the lower house of or the House of Representatives. To that end, once we know that the lower house has 41 members, once you have the command of 21 of those 41 members, then you command a majority. That has absolutely nothing to do with the PNM or as a political party or the UNC or anybody else. It has to do with the members of the House of Representatives, and of the 41 members, once we can get somebody who could command the majority, 21, then that person is appointed prime minister. So that becomes important. For instance, supposedly we have a coalition government or any of those other issues. It doesn't necessarily mean that the leader of a party will become the prime minister. The president can choose anybody who the president believes commands control. So that's separate and distinct from what general council and the PNM will do as opposed to their political leader. And that aspect of it is a whole different discussion that goes outside the realm of constitutionality of Trinidad and Tobago, but goes towards the realm of the constitution.
Of the PNM. Right, exactly. Because what I was talking about is the PNM's constitution and their party's caucus. So when we look at what was done, well, yesterday, that transition, does that say to the public that even before the next election, Stuart Young is the prime minister based on the parliamentary caucus of him being the prime minister?
As soon as Keith Rowley hands in his resignation to the president, that he is no longer willing to serve as prime minister, the president has no other choice but to appoint a prime minister, and she will then fall back to Stuart Young, because by which time I'm almost certain, probably even coming out of yesterday's meeting, a letter would have already been drafted to the president with all 21 members of the PNM signing, affixing their signature, saying that they support Stuart Young. So, as soon as Keith Rowley hands in his letter of resignation, the president will appoint Stuart Young as the next prime minister.
And going back to the party's constitution and how the convention may be treating with this, do you see anywhere where there is a conflict between what is happening here within the parliamentary caucus and the actual PNM's constitution?
Well, it's two different things, as I said before. How the PNM goes about choosing its political leader, and that is something we really have to hear about. When I say hear about, let me back up a little bit. In all that we've heard Keith Rowley said yesterday about Stuart Young being the next prime minister, did he say that he's resigning as political leader and that Stuart Young is going to be the next political leader? No. I did not hear political leader of the PNM come into play. I heard the discussion yesterday about the prime minister, but not about political leader. The constitution of the PNM tells us that the convention on a one man one vote basis will elect a political leader. Keith Rowley yesterday went on to suggest that the convention will be held on the 28th of September. That is, I mean, he is still political leader. He could say that. But herein comes the question. If he decides to resign earlier than the 28th of September as political leader, which I expect that he will do, if he's resigning as prime minister, I expect that he will probably resign as political leader at the same time. Then that throws the PNM into some degree of uh, convulsions in determining how they will select or elect a political leader. Now, we know that the PNM constitution tells us that in the absence of a convention, which is the highest decision-making body of the PNM, there's a general council that will make the decision as to, or make decisions in the intervening period between the conventions. The general council, who leads the general council? As far as I'm aware, it's the chairman of the party, as well as the general secretary, with the political leader. We will note it was the chairman and the political leader who last October decided to cancel the convention that they had proposed without even discussing it with general council. So the political leader and the chairman has significant powers. And it was only after they decided to cancel it that they went to general council. And general council told them, well, you all can't cancel it. And that is why we came back with the general secretary, Foster Cummins, coming back out and saying, we are postponing it. We're not canceling it. So there was a difference between what the political leader, the chairman, and the general secretary had agreed to. But when they went to general council told them no. My question now is whether or not general council has the fortitude now to tell the political leader, as well as the chairman of the party and the general secretary, that we need to have an elected political
Political
leader
leader.
before we go into the general elections. Because as it stands right now, what the Prime Minister proposed yesterday, the 28th of September, that would have been clearly after the general elections would have been called in Trinidad and Tobago. The parliamentary term ends on the 28th of August. Yes, there's the legal available time, 3 months thereafter. But when you consider our other constitutional requirements in Trinidad and Tobago, that is, the passing of a budget must be done before the end of October. A parliament should be in place at the beginning of October. And for a parliament to be in place at the beginning of October, the latest you could call an election is 3 weeks before. So, for a general election, that is. So that means that the general election must be held at latest in the first week or by the middle of September. Keith Rowley yesterday said the convention will be held on the 28th, which will be post general election. So, from that perspective, I don't know whether he has assumed, Keith Rowley that is, has assumed that he could speak fully on behalf of General Council or on behalf of the convention. I don't know. But that would be something that the PNM as a political party, as an organization, would have to determine and to say how much power does the political leader and the chairman exercise over the matters. Now,
What?
bearing chairman is Stuart Young, I mean, he wouldn't mind the power, but there's a constitution.
Right, and when we look at internal party elections, we know that that usually causes some level of division within the party. Do you think that it is a strategy of the People's National Movement to ensure that that type of potential chaos doesn't happen prior to a major election?
Now, again, let me correct you. You keep talking about the People's National Movement having refusing it. I am not saying that the PNM has said that. I am saying that the political leader and the
Right,
chairman has. It
right.
is not the party. I am still waiting for the party to come out formally and say whether or not they have accepted that. What we know, and you rightly have said it, I have seen circulated on social media this morning a list of 9 people supporting Penelope Beckles and a list of 11 people supporting Stuart Young as the person to be appointed prime minister. I don't know whether that social media post has any validity, but the point about it is clearly there's already a division in the PNM, and that division could be exacerbated once we get into a full-blown convention when there's an election. So clearly the PNM would like to avoid that distraction. Whether that will happen, we'll have to wait and see.
Right. And what do you say to the persons who are saying this is not really the business of the general public or any other political party, but this is the business of the persons who pay their dues and identify themselves as being members of the PNM party?
I totally agree with that. It is only the PNM. And that is why I am not jumping in there and saying anything different. It is the PNM, and that's why I keep saying it is the PNM which has to come out and say that. It is not for the UNC, it is not for the population at large, it is not for the president, it is for the PNM as a political institution to tell the PNM membership whether they are going to abide by their constitution or whether they are going to be in breach of their own constitution. That is for the PNM and the PNM alone to decide.
Understood. And do you think that this event or this transition sets the stage for what we can see at the level of the party in the future? Do you think that a new standard is being set in regards to the transition between one prime minister to another?
Again, again, we don't want to. We have to separate these issues. Prime ministerialship is different to political leadership. So, whatever happens with regard to the prime ministership, that's a whole totally different issue. How the party decides to deal with its political leader and elect its political leader and so forth, that's a matter for the party. Now, if I may just extrapolate from your question, what we could say is simply we've seen what has happened in other countries of the world. Just yesterday, we've seen the example where, in the case of Canada, the Prime Minister has said, I am stepping down, but before I go fully, I'm allowing the party to elect a new political leader who will take over as Prime Minister. We did not only see it there, we saw it in England when Boris Johnson had changed, had given up power, and so on. On several occasions in England, they changed their political leader before they changed their prime minister. Keith Rowley has decided he's going to put the cart before the horse. That is his choice. As to whether the party, the PNM as a party, is going to accept that, that is for the PNM to say.
Do you have any predictions, particularly on when we might be looking at going into a general election this year?
Okay, so I could start with the cutoff date. I've already alluded to that. that we must have a general election before the first weekend in September, okay? Or at latest by the middle of September. We can't have it beyond that, okay? But let's come forward. So anytime we've heard, for instance, again yesterday, the Prime Minister has said that he's going to conduct screening for the remaining members of his, the outstanding members of his party candidates by the end of January. So I'm using the end of January as my cut-off date for that. By the end of January, the PNM will have in place its full slate of candidates. If we are to take that as a given, the earliest possible time for an election after that would be the middle of March, sorry, middle of March, 2 weeks after Carnival. But having said that, you have to look at the religious calendar too. Some people have said that the Islamic community in Trinidad and Tobago will be celebrating the month of Ramadan, ending, for instance, I think the date I was told was the 28th of March. So, assuming that the Prime Minister and the PNM decides to abide by that, I am projecting that the election will be held anytime between April 1st and, let's say, September the 1st. So that period is when the election will be held. Yeah, the other aspect of it, for instance, is when will the Prime Minister resign? Because the Prime Minister has said that he will leave the calling of the election date to the new Prime Minister,
Right.
George. So I am assuming that, knowing the way that Trinidad works, I'm assuming that Rowley will resign as Prime Minister probably around Carnival. We like Bacchanal around Carnival time, so that might be a good time for him to resign. And thereafter, if he resigns at that point in time, bearing in mind that we're still looking at April, May, June, July, August, that 5 month period. But I am projecting that Stuart Young will need some time to get his feet on the ground. So probably I am looking at we probably go back sometime around uh, June, July for an election. But again, it will be held anytime between the beginning of April and the beginning of September.
Understood. Well, we're going to take a quick break right here and we'll be back as we continue our conversations right after this season. Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Now, we have been chatting a bit about the handing over of the prime ministerial position from Dr. Keith Rowley to MP Stuart Young. And this morning we have been having that conversation with Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath. Welcome back. Good morning. Now, we heard from the opposition leader last night when she indicated that this move from Dr. Rowley was akin to one made by Joe Biden as he anointed Kamala Harris to succeed him. Do you agree with this, or do you see the parallels being drawn here?
Well, there are parallels to the fact that Keith Rowley has decided that he is going to step down, and he had made that suggestion a long time ago, and he's following through on it. As opposed to a Biden who had decided he is not going to step down, but rather is going to run out the term and probably face the next election. Keith Rowley, in this particular case, however, has anointed Stuart Young in the same way Biden would have anointed Kamala Harris, and both Kamala Harris and Stuart Young did not go through the internal election process of their respective political parties. So yes, there are parallels. I hope, however, that, well, I don't know whether, I did not hear the leader of the opposition, but if we continue with parallels, for instance, one of the things that we know for a fact as a parallel that happened with Kamala Harris was that when she took over from Biden, she could not divorce herself from the Biden policies, having been Biden's vice president for the last 4 years. So, for all intents and purposes, she had to take ownership of all of those policies. In the same way, I expect Stuart Young to take ownership of all the policies that the government would have taken over the last 10 years, or as and thereafter, and thereupon, he will now have to take all the blame with it. He cannot say that was Keith Rowley and this is now me. He has to simply say that this is a continuation of the party. Whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing for the PNM, we really have to wait and see. But for all intents and purposes, we'll watch and see that Stuart Young is the protege of Keith Rowley. Keith Rowley has been his only master, so to speak. If they had chosen, for instance, a Penelope Beckles, we could have said that Penelope had trained under both Patrick Manning and Keith Rowley. But in the case of Stuart Young, we could only say that his only master, his only guru would have been Keith Rowley. So we really have to wait and see whether he's simply a replica of Keith Rowley or whether he would try to chart some different course that will give people the confidence that this is a different PNM. Of course, bearing in mind that Keith Rowley has already screened the majority of candidates for the next general election, and what we know for a fact is simply that from the sitting MPs, more than 75% of them thus far have been there before. The one thing that Stuart Young cannot claim is that he's leading a new party, because for all intents and purposes, this is the same PNM that Keith Rowley would have minted.
Right. And one of the questions that I see continuing to pop up on social media is why not a woman? Do you think that this current PNM administration is ready to have a woman as their leader?
That is again left to the membership of the PNM. I will not dare go there. I am not a member of the PNM. That is the PNM's decision. Membership. Go back to the Constitution: one man, one vote; one woman, one vote. That is the membership of the PNM will have to determine who becomes their next leader.
And I'm guessing your answer may be around the same area when we look at some of the conversations surrounding potential racial tensions that might arise within the People's National Movement. How are you feeling about that particularly?
Well, this is a nice question. Yesterday I joked about it a lot. The PNM is known as to be an Afro party, an Afro-based party. The leadership, the membership, the rank and file, largely Afro-based. Won't it be interesting if we now have a chairman of the party who is non-Afro? And since he is chairman, I don't think that he will become political leader, because he's already holding the post of chairman. Only if he resigns as chairman and runs as political leader. But what happens if one of the other deputy political leaders, and there are only two who could become, there are four deputy political leaders. There's your Anselm Dennis from Tobago, there's Rohan Sinanan, there's Colin Imbert, and there's Nyan Gadsby Dolly. So what happens if the party decides to go after or select Colin Imbert, which will take totally away from the face of the PNM that color issue? Wouldn't that be interesting? Well, to me, it would be very much so interesting. But we really have to wait and see, because two things, again, noted. Jennifer Baptiste Primus said yesterday that she does not believe that if the Stuart Young goes up in a national convention, in a PNM's convention, that he will succeed. Clearly, I think the race matter will pop its head up there. Yesterday again too, we saw where the cabinet, well, again, this is from unofficial social media posts, where they're saying that 9 out of the 20 members of the House of Representatives voted for Penelope Beckles and 11 voted for Stuart Young. That division is clear yesterday, it has been clear yesterday, and that division will continue. How the PNM membership and the rank and file decides to deal with it, we really have to wait and see. But clearly, I don't think that we Keith Rowley is an Eric Williams. Let me just put it like this. In that, I don't think whatever Keith Rowley says, the membership will simply accept it. That was the case with Eric Williams, but I'm not sure Keith Rowley is an Eric Williams to have that kind of control over the party. So we'll really wait and see what the rank and file says in terms of who will be their next political leader when given the opportunity. And I think Keith Rowley is fearful of that. That is why he has proposed the 28th of September as the date for the next PNM convention.
All right, and thank you so much, Dr. Ragoonath. But as we close up our discussion this morning, I want to thank you for bringing those perspectives and being very careful not to get too much into the business of the People's National Movement and leaving that for their membership to deal with. But it's clear that we are in the swing of the election season, although the bell has not yet rung. We know that election is right around the corner. Do you have any comments on that before you go?
Well, basically, we are into an election year. As far as I know, in Trinidad, the two major political parties are gearing up for that battle. In the case of Tobago, again, the two major parties in Tobago are gearing up for that battle. When that will come, we'll have to wait on Stuart Young to tell us the date. But the point about it is that preparation for this election has started a long time ago, and it will culminate on election day. I suspect changes in the PNM, in the PNM's leadership, may have some impact on how some voters may think. I suspect that as to whether it will come to pass or not. But I could tell you that a lot of Trinidad and Tobago right now feels alienated from the political scene simply because they have to bear upon various other types of pressures, pressures of crime, the pressures of the economy, and when the election bell is rung, then they'll go headlong into an election. Right now, however, focus is on carnival and then crime and the economy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this morning's discussion. And again, thank you to Dr. Ragoonath for joining us this morning. And we want to thank you for all that you have been doing to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments. And we want you to have a great day.